Okay, good morning. My name is Nick Carlson. I'm a customer success manager here at Honorlock. And today we have 90 minutes blocked off to go over using Honorlock with Blackboard, as well as using Honorlock with Blackboard in conjunction with third-party publisher exams. This webinar today is being recorded, so I will pass off a link to that recording to my key contacts at Texas A&M. And they should pass that all along to you accordingly. Before we hop into the content of today's webinar, I just wanted to mention that we are using Zoom today. So I'm sure some of you are very familiar with Zoom, but just in case you're not, you should have a Zoom toolbar on the bottom of your screen, and you should see a Q&A button on that toolbar. You'll also have access to the chat pane there, but we would recommend using that Q&A section because it will include all of your questions as well as the answers that my colleagues give to those questions in the recording of the webinar. All right, so before we do hop into the content, I did want to give you all a brief overview of what Honorlock can do for your Blackboard exams, as I'm sure it's brand new to most of you. So Honorlock is a remote proctoring service. You can use Honorlock in conjunction with Blackboard to have your exams proctored. As far as scheduling proctoring for your exams goes, that's all done in Blackboard. So Honorlock is simply piggybacking off of the availability dates that you set in Blackboard for your exam. So whether that is the start or end dates, the due dates, the number of attempts, and the timer for the exam, that's all still controlled and set in the test options of your Blackboard exams. On the student end, as far as scheduling goes, there is no scheduling required. So we actually have support and proctoring teams available around the clock, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. As long as an exam is available to a student and it is Honorlock enabled, they are able to take their exam. So whether that's 6 a.m. or 6 p.m. or even as late as midnight or 1 a.m., we can make that happen. All right, so to get started here, what I have up in front of me is a Blackboard test instance that we have access to here at Honorlock. Most likely, your Blackboard instance is going to look quite different as they're customized, and it varies by school to school. However, the overall functionality of using Honorlock in Blackboard is pretty much identical. So you should be able to get a lot out of this training. The only differences may be in the organization of the elements on the user interface and how you navigate and access Honorlock. So to start here, we are going to navigate to a course in Blackboard. And I seem to already be in student preview. Let me get out of that. All right, so from our course, we'll go ahead and navigate to the content section. Now, I already have Honorlock added to my course. The setup for you all will vary depending on how Texas A&M sets this up for you. They could technically be adding the Honorlock tool to your courses for you, or you may need to add it to the course yourself. Just in case you're adding the Honorlock tool yourself, I'll cover that. So under Tools, you'll see I have Honorlock LTI here. Now this could also display under Build Content. Once again, that depends on how it was set up by your learning management systems administrators. So whether you find it under Build Content or Tools, if you need to add Honorlock to a course, you'll click on Honorlock LTI. You'll simply name it Honorlock. You don't need to change any of these settings, so you can leave all of the options as is. We don't need to set date and time restrictions, so we would just need to click Submit. Now, adding Honorlock to your course is as simple as that. However, there is one last step that we need to complete to install Honorlock to the course, and that is simply clicking on the Honorlock LTI to launch it. Once the Honorlock LTI has been launched once, installation for Honorlock in that course is complete. So I'm going to close this just for the moment. Now with Blackboard, you're enabling Honorlock in the test options for your tests. So as you can see here, I have this HL midterm exam. That's the exam that we'll be using for today's demonstration. However, I just wanted to give you an idea as far as how you can go about creating a test and enabling Honorlock for a test. So I'll go to assessments and test. Now I already have some existing tests, but I could create a new one if I wanted to. I'm going to go ahead and use one of my existing tests and click submit. Now from here, I'm brought to the test options. So this is actually where I was talking about before in regards to the availability of the exam. So all of that is still set and controlled in Blackboard, the number of attempts, the timer, and then the availability dates. But you may have already noticed that I have a new Honorlock section here. So I'll just need to click this click to enable button. That will expand this section and it will take me to where I can customize my proctoring settings, my student guidelines, and my accommodations for my Honorlock exam. Now I'll be covering all of these sections in great detail. I'm just kind of glossing over it now just to show you how we're enabling Honorlock for an exam. So once you have everything set up as you would like it, you'll just go ahead and click save. That will save your Honorlock settings, but you'll still need to click submit in Blackboard to go ahead and create the Honorlock enabled exam. So I can see I have it here, Honorlock practice test, which I've just created. Now let's go ahead and navigate to the Honorlock tool. In this Honorlock tool, this is going to show you a list of exams that you have enabled Honorlock for in your Blackboard course. So we can see that practice test that I just created. We can also see that midterm exam that I'll be actually using today for the demonstration. So after you've enabled Honorlock for one of your exams, you always have the ability to come to the Honorlock tool, click settings, and then make adjustments to your exams as needed. So starting off with our proctoring settings here. Now these all have a little description below each of one of them, but I'm going to provide some more information and detail on that. So if record webcam is turned on, and we can see a feature is turned on because we have a blue check mark next to it, we can click it to toggle it on or off. Record webcam would indicate that students are required to have a working web camera in order to take their Honorlock enabled exam. That can be a built-in camera into their laptop. It could be an external camera that's connected to a desktop computer. This record webcam feature also enables the recording of audio through the student's microphone. Once again, that can be built into the computer or attached externally. Next, we have record screen. If this is turned on, it's going to indicate that the student needs to share their screen and record their screen with Honorlock, much like I'm doing right now in Zoom with you all. Record screen is also going to force the use of a single display or monitor for this Honorlock enabled exam. Therefore, if a student has 2 or 3 monitors, for example, connected to their computer, they will actually be prompted to physically disconnect any additional monitors before they can proceed into their exam. The reason for this is Honorlock requires there to be one display because we can only record one display. Therefore, we need to ensure there's only one display, and therefore we're not allowing students to access resources on an additional monitor. Next, we have record web traffic. If this is toggled on, we're logging the student's internet activity inside the Google Chrome browser only during exams. Now, this record of web traffic is limited to Google Chrome because that is the only compatible browser to be used with Honorlock. While we do support a variety of different devices like Mac computers, Windows 10 computers, even Chromebooks, Any of those devices must have Google Chrome installed on them to take an Honorlock enabled exam. The web traffic or history, a list of the sites the student visited or attempted to visit during their exam, will be accessible in the session recording for that student, and we'll be covering that in the latter portion of today's demo. Next, we're moving into the authentication steps. So these are steps the student needs to go through to start their exam, and that starts with a student photo. Now, as far as the student photo goes, we do have some AI incorporated into it. And whenever you hear me say AI, I'm referencing artificial intelligence. So for this photo step, there is facial recognition. It is making sure that it is recognizing a face is in front of the web camera when that photo is taken. However, it is not matching that face to a database of faces, nor is it matching that face to the next step, which is the student ID step. So after we take our student photo or selfie, we like to call it, the student will be prompted to show ID. This does need to be a photo ID because like the previous step, it does have facial recognition. It's making sure that it can recognize a face on that ID card. Once again, it's not matching that face to a database of faces, nor is it matching that face to the previous step, the photo step. However, what it is matching is to the name of the student in Blackboard. So it's ensuring that the full name on the ID card matches the full name of the student in Blackboard. Therefore, if you have any students that underwent a last name change, maybe they were recently married, for example, you'll want them to get that updated as soon as possible. The last authentication step is the room scan. This prompts students to do a 360-degree environment scan before their assessment begins. They'll need to show their entire surroundings, including the surface or desk area, to their webcam before they can start their exam. However, there's no AI, there's no artificial intelligence built into the room scan. Therefore, the room scan cannot technically detect objects. It can't see things like electronic devices or notes or textbooks, things along those lines. It can also not detect whether or not a room scan was completed sufficiently and slowly. Therefore, since there's no AI built into the room scan, it's really up to the student to perform a complete and accurate room scan. And it's also up to you as instructors to provide adequate instructions, guidelines, expectations for your students. I even have some clients that notify students that they'll be penalized. Their grade may not count. They may lose points if they don't perform a full room scan. Manual review, that's a different level of service with Honorlock. We won't be covering that today. Next, we'll move into our during exam options. We have two calculators available to us. One is a basic calculator, and the next is a more advanced scientific calculator. If these calculators are enabled, they'll be accessible and viewable by the student on the top right of their test page. We have a feature where we can disable copy and paste on the exam page. So this blocks clipboard actions, including keyboard commands. So Command-C on a Mac or Control-C on a Windows device, as well as right clicks. So as you can see here, I've highlighted some text and I'm right clicking that text. I have access to a dropdown. As long as disable copy and paste is turned on, students will not be able to right click, nor will they be able to access any menus from right clicking. Disable printing. We also have the ability to block printing of the exam content of the test page. So while students can still technically bring up a print screen dialog, they can bring up a pop-up where they're setting their printing options. The pages of the exam will be entirely blank. Therefore, we are preventing the student from printing that exam content or saving it to a PDF file. Next, we have Browser Guard, which is Honorlock's form of a lockdown browser. We're limiting the browser activity to the exam content, to the test page, as well as any whitelisted URLs. And I prefer to say that as allowed websites, just easier to understand. So the way Browser Guard works, just as a reminder, Honorlock is a Google Chrome extension. We are not an application that is downloaded and installed to the computer. Therefore, we have minimal control. Our control the extent of our control is inside the Google Chrome browser. We don't have access to the device or operating system. So with BrowserGuard, we do our best to limit access to the exam content. If a student goes to create a new tab and types in a new website address and go to that new website, it'll actually automatically close this tab unless that website was whitelisted as an allowed website. BrowserGuard also should force the test page to the forefront of the screen and in full screen. So if a student tries to open an application, we'll say Microsoft Word, for example, they might be able to open the application, it might be open on the computer. However, BrowserGuard should force the test page to the forefront, preventing the student from accessing that outside application. Often used in conjunction with BrowserGuard is whitelist URLs. If we enable that, that expands to a configuration section. Just to give you some examples of websites I can whitelist here, if I whitelist youtube.com, I'm technically providing students access to every single video all across YouTube. Probably not something you're looking to do. You'll want to make sure that you're whitelisting a specific URL or website link to the resource that you'd like students to have access to. Now, when you're whitelisting URLs here, you're simply telling Honorlock which websites are allowed. However, you'll also need to provide links to those websites to your students. I would recommend providing those links directly in the test. So if you can, in the question stem, for example, is the most convenient place a student could click and launch a link and then access a resource in a new tab. Moving on to our student guidelines section. So we have all of these toggles available to us, and whenever you go to enable Honorlock for an exam, these will actually all be off by default. So as a default, if the instructions are empty and the guidelines are toggled off, Honorlock will enforce our own default testing guidelines, which mimic a high-stakes testing center. However, you have the full control to customize this to your liking. So just to give you a brief overview of what all of these toggles do, if we turn Open Book Allowed on, that would indicate to students that they can access an ebook or a textbook during their exam. Notes Allowed would reference physical notes being allowed during the exam. Scratch paper allowed, that one is pretty self-explanatory, but you'll most likely want to expand on it in the additional instruction section. You might want to let students know how many sheets of scratch paper they can use and possibly provide more detailed instructions on showing that scratch paper blank, front and back, to the web camera during the room scan. Next, we have restroom breaks allowed, another one that is pretty simple, but you'll also want to expand on. You'll most likely want to tell students if these breaks are allowed, how many breaks they can take, what the duration of those breaks is, etc. Handheld calculator, that would reference physical calculators being allowed. You could let students know what specific models are allowed in this additional instruction section. Now, if handheld calculator allowed is turned on, that would never indicate that a mobile phone or device could be used during an exam. Mobile phones are strictly prohibited unless you were to provide explicit guidelines on allowing those devices in the instruction section. Headphones allowed, that one is self-explanatory, but it does go hand in hand with hats allowed. Hats would include hoodies, ball caps, basically anything that could potentially cover the student's head and ears. As I'm sure we're well aware that if you're covering the ears, you could be covering a student using earbuds. Taking an exam in a public area, if we turn that one on, we're letting students know that they could potentially test in a coffee shop, for example, maybe a public library, anywhere that's public where there's things going on. There's people talking, maybe there's music, there's people walking around behind the student that would be visible in their web camera, etc. Background noise allowed. So let's turn off our public area. Say we're just allowing background noise. That would indicate to a student that's testing in the privacy of their own home that they could potentially be listening to some music, that they might have a family member in the adjacent room watching television, things along those lines. Now in our additional instruction section, and let me see if I can expand this and blow it up a little bit for you all. You can see I have a very solid and detailed example here. I indicate that it's a closed note exam, and then I go into detail about what is or isn't allowed. I'm expanding on all of my toggles up here. I even tell students that they need to show their entire work area during the room scan or you'll be penalized. And then I have additional guidelines as far as the testing area. Lighting needs to be sufficient in order to have a quality recording of the web camera. The desk or surface needs to be cleared of all materials, all books, papers, notebooks, calculators, etc. So this additional instruction section and student guidelines section is visible to students before they launch proctoring with Honorlock. It is also visible to our proctors to our proctors and our support team before, during, and after an exam. Just in case a student reaches out to support, our proctors and our support teams can reference these guidelines and instructions and accurately assist and help your students. This next section, accommodations, is not visible to students. It is only visible to proctors and support staff. This is the place to provide any specific student accommodations. I have a few examples here. For example, Alex Jones can take multiple bathroom breaks. If you're not allowing your entire class to take bathroom breaks and just Alex Jones, you'll most likely want to include accommodations like this here, so we don't tell the entire class. And then I have another example. Sam Smith is allowed to use an additional monitor. As long as Sam is aware of his accommodation, he can reach out to our support team and they can bypass that single display feature for Sam. For these accommodations, it's important to know that Honorlock does not have control over the availability, the time limit, the number of attempts, or any other exam availability features that you designate in Canvas. That's all still done and controlled in Canvas, and we should avoid including those types of accommodations here. Now this last setting, exam visibility, this defaults to no, use the dates on the exam to determine student view. I would highly recommend leaving this at the default of no, as changing it to yes, always show the exam in student view, can be quite confusing for students. So regardless of the availability of the exam, it would still show this exam in the list of exams for students. So definitely recommend leaving that at no. So anytime if you're enabling your exam for the first time, as we saw at the beginning of the demonstration, you'll want to click save. And anytime you come back here and make your adjustments, you'll want to click save as well. Now, if you're doing this for the first time, you're most likely going to need a helping hand, and that's perfectly fine. Hopefully you're absorbing some of the material of today's training, but I do understand it's a lot of information to take in. So if you need some help, we have some resources for you right here. Just to start, some hands-on assistance, we do have live chat. So this chat bubble on the bottom right, or at the very top right of the screen, this need help button, that will start a chat with our support team, who is available 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Our support for faculty and administrators is also available via phone and email. However, we would recommend using the live chat as the most immediate response and immediate support. If you're looking to figure some things out on your own, we can help with that too. So clicking on this menu button, the ellipses here on the top right, we can click on Honorlock Guide. That's going to take us directly to our knowledge base and specifically to an article on how to use Honorlock with Blackboard. This covers everything that I am going over today and more. And from this page, you'll actually have access to all kinds of different articles, like how to create a practice exam in Blackboard. We have how-to videos for students and faculty. Now, going back to Honorlock, that's a good reminder, that practice exam. I did want to point out that we have the ability to create a practice exam. So accessing the menu, we can click Add Practice Exam. We have a little guide accessible to you. And then we have a download button, which is downloading a zip file. So the way this works for Blackboard, if you need a practice exam, you can download this zip file and then import the zip file to Blackboard, to your course. And that will create a pre-made practice exam. This practice exam has a few questions on it that just relate to proctoring and using Honorlock in general. You'll still need to enable Honorlock for your practice exam, just as we went over at the beginning of the demonstration. The practice exam is highly recommended to be added to each of your courses. The reason for this is because it gives students the opportunity to go through all the authentication steps. You know, they can still go through the student ID, the room scan, the photo, etc. for a practice exam. Familiarize themselves with how to use Honorlock, make sure they're not having any compatibility or technical issues. And then, you know, that sets them up for success when they need to take an actual high stakes exam with Honorlock. Those practice exams do not count towards billing or usage. They are 100% free of charge, but from my understanding, Texas A&M is actually being billed by the user. So that information is not too relevant. One last thing about practice exams is that they are not recorded, proctored, or flagged. So if you are creating an Honorlock practice exam, it's a simulated exam experience. For students, all the steps appear to be the same, all the authentication steps, etc. However, you won't have access to any session recordings for your practice exams. Now, if you're looking to save your work, we have something that can help you with that. So let's say you come in and set up your first exam. It's a high stakes exam. You have all these features turned on. You spend quite a lot of time on your student guidelines, your additional instructions. We have the ability to save all of that information. So if we click exam profiles here on the top right, we have the ability to select an existing profile or create a new profile based on the exam settings that we currently have on the screen. These profiles can be used across all of your courses, so they are at the user level. However, they cannot be shared between users. You will need to create your own profiles. If you ever need to manage, edit, or delete your profiles, you can do so by accessing the menu here on the top right and going to Manage Profiles. All right, so before we move over into the student perspective, I wanted to show you something that Honorlock changes in your Blackboard test options for your Honorlock enabled exam. So coming back to Blackboard here, this HL midterm exam is Honorlock enabled. This is the one we're working with today for the demonstration. If we go to the test options for this exam, and we scroll down, you'll see that we have it Honorlock enabled. We can access all of our settings here as well. Let me minimize this. And did I pass over it? I always seem to miss where this is. Okay. All right, so you can see here that we have a password for the exam. This password reads as HL no edit followed by a series of characters. We were trying to give you a little hint with this no edit text in that this password is automatically generated and attached to this quiz when you enable Honorlock for the quiz. This password is required by Honorlock in order to proctor this Blackboard exam. So it's important, three things that are important for the password. One is that we do not remove the password. If we were to remove the password, that would potentially allow students to take their exam unproctored without Honorlock. If we were to change the password, that would potentially prevent students from even accessing their exam. And lastly, never provide the password to students. The students will never need this password. It's always automatically inserted for them. If you were to provide the password to students, they could also potentially take their exam unproctored. So plain and simple, long story short, it's important that we leave this password untouched. All right, so I'm going to hop over into student view. So as a student, for a Blackboard exam, there's a couple of different ways they can start an Honorlock Blackboard exam. Now, one of those ways is most common, and that is simply clicking on the exam with the link that was provided to them in Blackboard. If you are making the Honorlock tool visible to students, that can also be a way to access the exam. So if we go ahead and access the Honorlock tool as a student, the first thing we'll see as a first-time user of Honorlock is that this exam requires Google Chrome and the Honorlock Chrome extension. Students can get that easily installed by agreeing to our terms of service and our privacy policy, and then clicking Get Started. That's going to take your students directly to the Chrome web store where all of its extensions are housed. They can click Add to Chrome, Add extension, and that's it. Simple as that. Let's close this tab. And when we go back to the Honorlock tool that we originally opened, we'll have access to our list of exams, or our list of available exams. Now, directly from here, right from accessing the Honorlock tool to start, students have access to our live chat via this little bubble or via this Need Help button. Our support for students, unlike administrators and faculty, is limited to chat and email. We currently do not offer phone support to students. So a student will go ahead and click Launch to get started with their exam. They will click Begin accessing the Blackboard exam. And then they'll be taken to the student guidelines and the additional instruction section that we went over previously. So all of those toggles for the guidelines will appear here with the bullet points, and the additional instructions will appear below that. Now, we still, as a student, have access to chat here and here. We also have access to a student-facing guide. If we click that, that takes a PDF file, opens that up for us. And this covers all of the steps that I'm going over today to get my exam started. If a calculator was enabled for the exam, that will also be available on the top right. Now, immediately accessing this page, we don't have a means to start the exam, and we did this intentionally. Students will need to scroll down and hopefully read through the instructions and then click Launch Proctoring. So I'm going to adjust my windows a little bit here just for the purposes of the demonstration. All right, there we go. Perfect. Nice to meet you all. So we're at that first step here, which is the student photo. So we'll click Take Photo. Next, we are prompted for ID verification. So I'll click I have my ID, and I'll hold my ID up to my webcam. ID verified successfully. If for whatever reason that step fails 3 times consecutively, it actually automatically starts a chat with our support team. They'll do their best to get the student into the exam as quickly as possible, as long as that is indeed the student that should be taking the exam. Now we're at the room scan step. So I'll click Begin Room. I'll get a little countdown here. It's going to tell me to scan my room 360 degrees, including my work area. Make sure to show my desk area and any scratch paper. Now I have a laptop, so I simply unplug the power cord here. I'll pick it up. I'll turn it off to the side, I think, which is ideal because we're not trying to see me, we're trying to see the room. I conveniently have a little swivel chair here so I can kind of spin around and, you know, give it a slow and full accurate room scan. I'll also want to show the desk or the surface area that I'm using. Let me just plug back in here. So just as a reminder, there is no artificial intelligence in the room scan. It is not able to detect whether or not I did a full 360-degree scan, if I showed my desk area, etc. It's also not able to detect if I have like a mobile phone on my desk, for example. So I'll go ahead and I'll click I'm done. And then I actually get a replay. I can see everything that was captured during my room scan. This is handy because it gives students the opportunity to practice. They can make sure they're doing a full, complete, and slow room scan. If they miss something, they can click no redo, or they can just go ahead and proceed and click yes, submit. Now from here, we need to launch our screen recording. We need to share our screen with Honorlock. So we'll click that button. We'll click our preview image here, and we'll click share. Lastly, click to begin. Perfect. So we're in our exam. So throughout that whole authentication process, all of those steps that I just went through, if you have a timer set for your exam, none of those steps counts towards the timer. The timer does not actually begin until the student is viewing question one, until they're actually in their exam. Now I have my windows side by side here just for demonstration purposes. If your student was starting their exam, they would not have to watch themselves for the entirety of the exam. They'd have the test page maximized like this. Just bringing this back. Perfect. Now there's a couple other things that we can see in this webcam video here. We can see that my internet connection quality is good. We can see that we're live, we're recording, we have this flashing red light, and we can see how long we've been live for, how long it's been recording, how long we've been in our exam. Now, I understand that student privacy is a very hot topic these days. It's a very valid concern. So I wanted to give you all an idea of actually what Honorlock has access to during a student's exam. So basically, we do have access to the webcam, obviously, if that's turned on. So we can see the student, we can see their surroundings. We also have access to that screen recording. So I'm sharing my screen here. You can see at the bottom. So we do have access to the recording of the screen share and anything that's brought up onto the screen during that screen share. We also have access, if that log internet activity option is on, we have access to the internet activity in Google Chrome only during the exam. Once again, all of the things I just mentioned are only accessible during an Honorlock exam. We don't have access to any of that outside of exam times, outside of proctoring. Just to add on to that, we also don't have access to the student's network. We cannot access their network. We cannot access any other devices on their network. We don't have access to personal files, information, data on their computers, anything along those lines. All right. So at this point, the student would proceed and take their exam how they would normally any Blackboard exam. They'd answer questions, they navigate through their exam. Now, I'd like to give you a little bit of an idea as to how proctoring works at Honorlock. So our proctoring does begin with AI, with artificial intelligence. We do not have a live proctor watching the entirety of all of your student sessions. So it starts with the AI. The AI is basically viewing all those sessions and it's looking for abnormalities. If it notices an abnormality, it's going to flag that. Just to give you a few examples of some abnormalities, in terms of audio, as long as we're recording the webcam, we're recording the audio. So for audio, we are generating a transcript based on everything that was said during the exam. And the AI is listening in, honing in on keywords or buzzwords, we call them. Just an example of a keyword would be accessing personal assistance. So if I was to say, okay, Google, or hey, Alexa, trying to wake up my device and ask it a question, we are flagging that behavior. Now, we're also looking for abnormalities in terms of the webcam recording. So we're hoping that there's at least one face and no more than one face in the frame of the webcam where you see me now. If there's not a face visible, we'll flag that. Simple as that. We'll flag it as face not visible. So if I was to get up, maybe go to the kitchen or the bathroom, I leave my computer, we are flagging that as face not visible. We're also flagging multiple people detected. So if I had a friend or a family member, walk behind me, pass through, and their face showed up on the webcam, we're flagging that as multiple people detected. So those are some of the examples of our flags here at Honorlock, and that's where our proctoring starts with our AI and the flags. However, we do have proctors available around the clock, and they are reviewing these flags in real time as they occur. So once a flag occurs, we'll say multiple people detected, for example. That flag occurs, a proctor will look into that student session. They'll use their best judgment. They'll look at the present moment, what's exactly occurring in the student's exam. They'll also review the past 30 to 60 seconds of the exam to see what exactly happened. They'll use their best judgment. Maybe it was just a family member passing. Maybe it was someone's mother, asking them to come down for dinner and the student was taking an exam. Hopefully it was something along those lines. However, the proctor is going to review that portion of the session. And if they deem that there may be academic dishonesty occurring, maybe there's something that could just potentially lead to academic dishonesty, like someone talking to the student in the same room, or they could simply just enforce your guidelines. They will always reference your student guidelines, your accommodations, and they will enforce those. So we'll use my example, multiple people detected. Say I have someone in the room with me and I'm asking them for help. Maybe I'm covering my mouth, but the audio is still being recorded, things along those lines. And we have a proctor who was flagged for the session and noticed this and decides to pop in on the student. So we call our pop-in, we call it a live pop-in, and that's how proctors intervene with students. Much like how a student can start a chat with our support team here on the bottom right, our proctors can also start chats with students. So they'll start a chat with the student, they'll introduce themselves, they'll be polite, courteous, but they'll also be quick and efficient. The reason for that is because these pop-ins do count towards your student's exam timer. We're not able to pause that timer. So the proctor will introduce themselves. Hi, my name is Nick. I'm your Honorlock proctor today. I noticed you had a third party in the room that could potentially assist you with your exam. Could you please ask them to leave and secure your testing environment? The proctor would ask something of the student. Hopefully the student would abide by the proctor's request. And once they do abide by that request, the proctor would simply allow the student to resume their exam. However, there would clearly be a violation and flags on that session if the student was participating in academic dishonesty or not following your guidelines, for example. We'll take a look at how all of that looks in more detail when we get into the session viewer, which we're going to move over to just now. So let me go ahead and submit my exam. And we can see our proctoring window closes. We get that check mark. So we're no longer recording. We no longer have access to the webcam, the screen recording, the web history, etc. So let's get back into our faculty view. So exit out of preview. And then let's navigate back to our Honorlock tool in that course. And we're going to our midterm exam. We'll go to the results. Okay. So here's where you're going to access a list of session results. I think I still have this zoomed in a little bit. Oh no, we're good. Okay. So you'll have a list of your students that have taken this exam using Honorlock. Now we have the student name, we have dates and timestamps for when the exam was started and ended, and then we have an incident level as well. All of these columns can be used to sort the list. You can also search for a specific student. I think I have one under Nicholas. There it is. And then you can filter the results by incident level as well, which is low, medium, or high. Now, these incident levels, let's talk about these, starting with low. Low incident level sessions are ones where nothing was flagged. The AI did not notice any abnormalities. Now, clearly, these are the ones that you would need to pay least attention to. However, you're more than welcome to review all of your student sessions if you would like. We're just trying to help you out and save you time. Medium incident level sessions are the ones where at least something was flagged. So whether that be face not visible, multiple people detected, there is at least one flag on these sessions. They are worth looking into. Now, a flag does not necessarily indicate academic dishonesty. A flag just indicates an abnormality noticed by the artificial intelligence. It's still up to faculty and administrators to go into these sessions, review them, take a look at the flags, and see exactly what happened, and make your own assessment, make your own determination. These high incident level ones, these are the ones that you want to pay most attention to. These are the ones that have red flags or violations applied to them, most likely by a live proctor. These are the sessions that we'll be looking at today. So this, let me see here. This one right here, this Nick Carlson preview user. So I did use a preview account in Blackboard as an instructor. This session is the one I just recently took. However, I'm not going to be using this one for today's demonstration. The reason for that is it does take time for Honorlock to process and upload the session recordings. So that's the webcam video and the screen recording video. We do have a high definition video for both of those, and it does take time. Generally, I'd say your sessions should be viewable within the hour of when a student submits their exam. Generally less than 60 minutes. However, worst case scenario during really high volume times like midterms or finals, or perhaps you have some very long exams like 3 to 4 hour exams, that's a lot of video footage to process and to upload. So those exams, it can technically take up to 24 hours at most to be able to view a student session. So because of that, I'm not even going to try to access this because I just submitted this exam, and we're going to use one of my sessions I believe I took yesterday. So we'll go ahead and click View Session. Okay. All right. So in our session viewer, we have our webcam recording on the top left, our screen recording on the top right, and then we have a variety of controls available to us to navigate through the exam. We also have an events list that can be used to navigate through an exam, and it's really the best and easiest way to do so. I'll start with the other manual ways to navigate. So we have the ability to play and pause the session recording, and that is both recordings in sync. We can jump forward 10 seconds, we can jump back 10 seconds, and we can increase the playback speed. If we're looking to speed things up and zoom through it, we can do that. Additionally, if we right-click one of these videos, we can click on Show Controls. We can do that for both of the videos. And that's going to give us some other options. One, we can mute the session. And two, we can maximize. So we can bring a video into full screen if we're looking to get a closer look at something. You can also use this little slider function here if you want. You can click and drag this dot and navigate to a particular point during a recording. So those are all extremely helpful and convenient ways to look at the session. However, I would recommend using the events list. So the events list is going to start when proctoring is launched. So this first timestamp is when they click launch proctoring. It is not the start of the exam. Then it will show as the student goes through the authentication steps, the selfie, the ID verification, and the room scan. You can click on any of these events and it's going to take you right to that particular authentication step. That applies to the room scan as well. So we can see that 20-second clip of my room scan here. We can see when the screen share was started. And then this screen capture video and webcam video events, this is the actual indicator for when the exam was started. Next, we will see the question number and an indicator next to that question number, whether it be high or green. If it's green, that would indicate there was no flags for that question number. So I viewed question 1 on this exam, and I have 5 indicators. Anytime you see this little arrow here on the bottom right, we can click an event. It will take us to that particular point of the event, and it can also expand that event to show all of the flags that occurred. So I have a few different flags here, and I actually ended up getting a live pop-in from a proctor who was myself. I actually popped in on myself. I know that sounds a little weird, but we have a flag for face not clearly visible. So we can see that I actually just got up. I stepped away from the computer. We also have a flag for right-click detected, copy detected. These are less severe flags because while we're flagging that right-click or that copy, it's actually blocked. It's preventing the student from doing that action. We're just still flagging it. Before I get into the live pop-in, we also have one more flag here, and that is test window lost focus. This is an extremely useful flag. So this test window lost focus flag is going to pop up at any point the test window is not the main focus on the student's display or monitor. So it's extremely sensitive. You could even have a student that has like a low battery warning. If a low battery warning popped up and it was in front of the test page, that would flag the session as test window lost focus. So we do get false positives there, but it's sensitive for a reason. We want you to be aware if at any point something was on top of the test content. Now, our live pop-in session here, we can actually access a chat. We can review the transcript for that chat. And here I am taking an exam and I am proctoring myself. So you can see I've just introduced myself, basically let the student know that there are multiple people in the room. Please secure your testing environment. We have them do a room scan basically to show that the person has left the room. And then we send them on their way. So the student was able to resume their exam after they asked a person to leave and then redid their room scan. Oh, I just close out of my session there. Okay, so that is how you'll see those live pop-ins in the events list. Now on the lower left here, you'll also have access to a transcript for the entire exam. So you can see everything that was said here. You'll also have an access to see all of the chats that the student was in. So these chats could be with our support team or they could be with a proctor. And then this question tab, this will simply show you the question that the student is currently on at that particular point in the exam. Lastly, the details tab is going to show you the student guidelines and additional instructions that you set for your exam, just to be used as a reference point when you're reviewing sessions. Let's close this. On the top right of our student results, we can click on summary report. And I don't have a report here because this report generates immediately after the exam's due date. My exam's due date is in 2025. Therefore, I do not have a report generated thus far. But this report is going to give you a high-level overview. It will tell you how many violations, how many manual attentions, how many yellow flags, how many students that didn't have issues. And then it's going to break down a list of students and what flags occurred for those students. You won't be able to click and view each session here. You'll need to go back to that results tab we were just viewing, but you at least have a high-level overview that can also be exported to a PDF file. All right, so that concludes the demonstration as far as using Blackboard with Honorlock. And we've kept it separate from third-party publisher exams because those exams do work differently. And that's what we'll hop into now. So let me just organize my windows here a little bit. I'm going to log into my Pearson MyLab Math account just so I have that up. All right, perfect. So if you're looking to have your third-party publisher exams proctor with Honorlock, we can help with that. In regards to third-party publisher exams, just a few examples would be Pearson, McGraw-Hill, Cengage, WebAssign. Generally, we do have compatibility with all of the major providers. If you have any questions regarding a specific publisher, please feel free to ask either in the chat or follow up with me after today's session. For these publisher exams, we have one major requirement, and that is that the exam needs to be password protected. So if I go to my quiz, my Honorlock test here in MyLab Math, you can see if I try to start my exam, it does prompt me for a password. So I do have this test password protected, and that is required for Honorlock to proctor a third-party exam. So in a perfect world, you've already created your third-party publisher, your exam, and that's where you're designating, the time limit, the availability, all of those things. Once you have that nailed down, you have your third-party publisher exam created. You'll want to come back to the Honorlock LTI or tool in your course. Click on the 3 dots on the top right, and then register third-party exam. So everything on the bottom here from the proctoring settings down, all things that you should already be a little familiar with because we've covered them today. So we have all of those options available to us for a third-party exam as well. This top section, this is different, and this is specific to registering a third-party exam. So to create your exam, you'll just need to give it a name. You'll need to set an exam start and an exam end time. Now, the reason we're designating availability here in Honorlock is because the availability of this exam is actually not controlled by Canvas. The availability is controlled in the third-party publisher website, and it is also controlled by Honorlock. This date and time range, is going to designate when a student can click the launch proctoring button with Honorlock. All other exam availability settings are done on the third-party publisher site. However, I would recommend having the availability here match that of the third-party publisher. That seems to reduce confusion amongst students. Once you've done that, you will want to indicate an exam platform. This is just a helpful reminder for students for what website or what platform they need to navigate to start their exam. Lastly, and most importantly, we need to designate the password. So in a standard Blackboard exam that has Honorlock enabled, we're not touching the password. That's all automatic. It's all created and controlled by Honorlock. But for the third-party exams, you do need to manage your passwords. So 1, you'll create that third-party exam, you'll password protect it, and 2, you'll need to make sure that the password listed here matches that of the password in the third-party exam. That is very important because the password is actually what links Honorlock to the third-party exam and allows us to proctor that exam. It's also really important that this password is never provided to students. If the password was provided to students, they could simply go to MyLab Math, for example, and type it in and start their exam, taking it unproctored. So I'm actually going to click cancel because I already have an exam created that I'll be using for the third-party demonstration. Or I did have a third-party exam. Let me see, where is that? You know what? I think we do need to create one. It should just take me a second here. Okay, so just to save us some time, I'm going to turn off a couple of these authentication features because we've already gone over these today. And we'll go ahead and click create. All right, so we have our Pearson Quiz 1 third party available until September 16th. Now let's close this, go back to Blackboard, and we're going to switch to student preview. And we'll go to content. Now, for accessing a third-party exam, a student is not going to see that listed in the content section unless you made a specific link that would launch the LTI, the Honorlock tool. So third-party exams need to be started from the Honorlock tool as a student. So we can see I have my Pearson Quiz 1 here. So I'll click launch. Now for third-party exams, Honorlock is actually going to pin that exam up here on the top left of the browser. Students will click launch proctoring. Looks like I left that room scan feature on. We did turn off the photo and ID. Just looking to save some time as we've already gone over these steps. But you can use all of the same features that you saw in my previous demonstration if you'd like. So let me just get past this room scan feature. Show my room, etc. Click I'm done. And yes, submit. And then we'll do the other standard stuff. We'll need to launch our screen recording. We'll click share. Okay. So at this point is where things get different. So everything up to now has pretty much been the same as far as the student process goes. However, at this point, we're alerting the student that you need to navigate to your exam provider, which in this case is MyLab Math. That could be deep linked potentially in your Blackboard instance, or it could be on a completely external website like this one I have open here. Either or is completely compatible with Honorlock. And we also have some additional instructions here for students. So you'll navigate to your specific exam. And when you're prompted to enter a password, click on the insert password button in the Honorlock webcam window. If you need assistance, click here. If you want to relaunch your camera window, you can click here as well. You'll also have all of your instructions. So if you want to provide a link to your students to the login page or to the exam page itself, you can provide that in the instructions as well. That'll make things a whole lot easier for your students. So for me, I'm aware where I need to go. I know my test is here on MyLab Math. I know I can click on my test and it prompts me for a password. However, at this point, students, I would say specifically on a Mac device, may get a little stuck their first go around. So on a Windows computer, there's a taskbar on Windows. We actually pin an Honorlock shield icon, much like this one, on the taskbar. And that icon correlates with the webcam window that I need to access now. On a Mac computer, it's a little bit different. My webcam window is active right now, but it's hiding behind my other windows. So I can drag these windows and move it over if I want, or also on a Mac, if I was to right-click Chrome, I'll get this drop down and I can access Honorlock proctoring. That will bring my webcam window to the forefront as well. All right, so from here, we're prompted for the password. Student will click insert password. We get this initializing text, begin your assessment, good luck. And then we can see here that Honorlock automatically typed in the password for the student. And it will show up as bullet points or asterisks. They will not be able to see it. Student will click submit, begin their exam. Once again, the timer, the availability, that's all still controlled here in the third-party publisher. Student would start their test. And they go about taking their exam how they normally would, just with Honorlock proctoring enabled for the exam. Whenever they're done, they'll submit the test in the third-party publisher site first. And once that's been submitted, they'll exit Honorlock here on the bottom left. It will notify them, are you sure you are done with your exam? They'll click OK. And then our proctoring session is submitted. So in regards to Third-party exams, the process is a little bit different from both the faculty end and the student end. I think it's very important to provide your students with the resources that we have available for them. I'll be sending a follow-up email to my key contacts at Texas A&M, but what I would recommend using is our knowledge base, because everything that we have is on this website. As far as exam configuration, we have articles and how-to videos for how to use Honorlock with third-party exams, with standard Blackboard exams, etc. We also have articles for students that might be troubleshooting through an issue. They might just need a helpful hand on how to use Honorlock for a universal exam, and we have a video specific for that as well. And lastly, I'm sure one of my colleagues has probably already shared this in the chat pane, but we have been hosting webinars all summer, and it's actually continued through the fall. So while today we went over using Honorlock with Blackboard and using Honorlock with third-party or universal sites, we have a webinar specific to both. So if you're looking for a refresher or just to see it from a different perspective, from a different host, one of my colleagues here at Honorlock, I definitely recommend signing up for one of these webinars. We have Blackboard's actually running right now, but we do have a third-party webinar coming up on Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. If you're not able to attend, I'd still recommend registering, because if you register, you'll still receive a copy of the recording the day after the webinar. Do still recommend attending, because we will have people on hand to answer all of your questions. All right, and that concludes the demonstration for today. Really appreciate all of your time. Thank you for attending. Looking forward to working with you all. Hope you have a great rest of your day.